over the next whatever, I'm gonna be rambling about a bunch of RPGs that I finished. Just whatever. We'll see. Okay, let's go. First up on the list, the Banner Saga. I'm gonna do the full trilogy instead of just one the game. So I really love this series. It is great Nordic-inspired visual novel, um, kind of RPG choices, but then it also has the Nordic fantasy elements, which are very compelling. Plus, it has an interesting turn-based battle system. I have not played many tactical RPGs, to be fair, but it has a very unique system where there's 2 health bars for each unit, and if you hit one, it'll make it easier to hit the other, and it's really fun. I really like it. Tentatively giving it, let's just say, 9 out of 10. Templar Battle Force. Okay, it's definitely not Warhammer 40k. Um, it's off-brand Warhammer 40k tactical RPG, kind of. You have a bunch of Templars, and they kill things in a bunch. There's a ton of missions. I kind of zoned out towards the end, but I think it took me like 14, 16 hours. Oh yeah, Banner Saga, each game took me like 6 to 8 hours. I give this like a 7 out of 10. Like it's a good game. I like good. It's a good game, but like I wouldn't go out and like buy it necessarily. Like out of the blue. Nice Little Republic. Okay, this is when I reviewed it. It was probably my favorite game of all time. But when I first played it, that is. I just love everything about it. It takes the good parts of Star Wars, which is like the mythology behind it, and like the setting, but then it doesn't have to do it with the boring original trilogy. I mean, I like the original trilogy, but like that's not where the interesting stuff is, if you ask me. It is great combat, great story, great characters. Um, yeah, it's just great all around. Really love this one. 10 out of 10. One of the best games ever. Persona 4. You might be surprised, but I really like Persona 4. I don't like it as much as when I first played it, but it's just a great game. Despite the fact that it's anime and turn-based RPG, I really liked it. It was really fun. It had great music, interesting characters. Again, I'm kind of on a broken record about having great characters, but it was really compelling to be able to interact with the different culture of Japan. Um, I mean, I don't think I would enjoy doing it a lot, but like as like a one-off thing, Persona 4 was really fun. Plus, it was pretty lengthy. Oh, oops. Uh, let's just say 9 out of 10. I can't. It it doesn't reach the heights of like a CRPG to me, but it's really really good. And there's a bunch of really awkward scenes that I hated, and a couple characters that I despise, like Kashiwagi. Fuck that character so much. Okay, Final Fantasy VII. Ignore the remake. I just found the first high resolution image. This was a good game. After playing Final Fantasy VI, and when people consider Final Fantasy VI like one of the best games ever, if not the best game ever, and I played it for 20 hours and did not like it. I was really worried going into Final Fantasy VII, but thankfully, it. One of the worst parts about Final Fantasy VI for me is that the world map was just not. I had no connection to it because there was nothing. There wasn't like enough visual difference between the areas. But in Final Fantasy VII, they fixed that. I found materia to just be espers, but one, better explained, and two, actually like fun to use. Like it was easier to swap them in and out of each other. They leveled up faster, I think, and also the story was good. It didn't resonate with me very deeply necessarily, but it's a great game. I understand why it's a classic, but I still can't justify giving it anything better than like a low 9 out of 10. Legend of Grimrock. This was really fun. I finished it just a couple weeks ago. Oh, oops. Knights of the Old Republic took me about 30 hours, 15 hours, around 65 hours for Persona 4 and like 35 for Final Fantasy 7. Grimrock took me around 15 hours. It was really fun. Grid-based dungeon crawler in the blobber style where you march as like a formation throughout stuff. It was really fun. Really enjoyed it. It had good puzzles and a bunch of secrets, which was really fun to find as many as I could. Narratively, it's probably the weakest out of any of the games except for Templar Battle Force so far. Yeah, it was just really nice. Being able to run circles around enemies to fight them was fun, but the biggest problem about this game is that there wasn't much challenge in the combat, and when there was challenge, it was because I would just like instantly die to a combat encounter instead of like being able to actually defeat I would either, if I get hit, I would die. That's what constituted a difficult combat encounter. So it was good, and from what I've heard, Grimrock 2 is even better. So I'm looking forward to play with that. 8 out of 10. Yeah, it's a really good game. Like if you like dungeon crawlers at all, highly recommend Grimrock. Baldur's Gate. We're back home. I'm back home in the CRPG genre. I fucking love Baldur's Gate. It was so good. I loved every second of it. Baldur's Gate was amazing. It was kind of boring. Unfortunately, it was not, like, I really loved it. I gave it, like, on my spreadsheet. Yes, I know my spreadsheet. I gave it, like, a 9.9 out of 10 or something. But then I sat back and I was like, wait a minute. Like, half the maps in this game are, like, just empty. And there was only, like, 3 absurdly compelling parts. But all the side quests were really fun. The characters were great. Especially like Minsk. I love Minsk. Some people can't stand Minsk. If you can't stand Minsk, we can't be friends. I do understand that the combat is not really for everyone, but to that I say get good. You're a scrub. I really like the overland exploration, which Baldur's Gate 2 did not have, but I liked it. I like this game a lot less than Baldur's Gate 2 because there's not nearly as much party interactions, which is one of the best parts of the series, if you ask me. 9 out of 10. I think it took me around 30 hours, roughly, and I did everything, including Durlog's Tower. Durlog's Tower is super good. I love that. Baldur's Gate 2, Shadows of... this is my 3rd favorite game of all time. So I'm really biased towards it. It took off where Baldur's Gate 1 left off in terms of flow. It's not a direct sequel. You don't need to play 1 to play 2. It's preferred because you'll understand things better and you'll have connections to the characters and stuff. But it took the worst parts of 1, which is the fact that you were starting a D&D campaign basically from level 1, so wizards could do 1 spell per day, basically. Baldur's Gate 2, you start at like level 8 or 9. I can't remember which. So your wizards can do things out they have a bunch of spells available to them. There's much more magic items. There's more enemies. There's more encounters. It's longer. There's more of everything. There's strongholds. There's many more city hubs, which is probably the best part of Baldur's Gate 1 were the city hubs of Baldur's Gate. I forget the name of the city in Baldur's Gate 2, but it was a really good city. And plus, you go to a bunch of classic D&D locations throughout this, like an Elven city, and I won't spoil the rest, but they're really unique. There's a bunch of special, unique items. And plus, it has a plot that is exceedingly compelling because it doesn't necessarily just rely on the fact that, oh, the big bad is evil, and I need to stop him because I'm a good boy. No, it's really personal why you hate this character, why you hate the main character, especially if you played Baldur's Gate 1 to the end. It took me around 65 hours to play, and I got basically everything done that I could in one playthrough. Oh, and as I mentioned earlier, party interactions are great. Sometimes the game is slightly unstable. Like, I needed to use console commands to actually finish a quest line because I did some dumb things. But oh, things aside, oh, also the combat is incredible because it isn't quite as high level. It's high enough level that spellcasters are actually useful, but not high enough that everyone is spell resistance and then they become not useful again. I just love Baldur's Gate 2. Play Baldur's Gate 2. It's definitely the best game on this list by far. I gave it a 10 out of 10. Have to play it. Baldur's Gate Throne of Baal. This is the expansion of Baldur's Gate 2 that wraps up the entire saga of Baldur's Gate. It's really good. It has a bunch of it's more or less entirely combat focused. So if you didn't like the combat in Baldur's Gate 1 or 2, especially in 2, you will not like Throne of Baal. It's significantly harder. You'll need to spend like a third of the battle pause to make sure that you micromanage everyone properly. The biggest problem with it is that it is the high level combat almost entirely, so you have to deal with spell resistances and taking off spell resistances and having your own spell resistances and hastes and all these other things, and this is where rest spamming can become a real problem, and you'll have to rest spam after each encounter so that you don't just die after one encounter. It's still really good, and it wraps up the saga in a good, compelling way, and I really like it, so I can't. I want to give it a 9 out of 10, but I can't justify giving it above an 8 out of 10 due to its the difficulty complaints. Fallout. I love Fallout. Fallout universe is one of my favorite. I love everything about it. I love the setting. I love how it's all set up as like this weird alternate parody universe of like 50s cultures mashed with pop culture references, but it's in the apocalypse. There's a bunch of really cheesy stuff. There's a bunch of absurdly dark stuff. But there's also then you can like in Fallout 1 you can, as a random encounter on the world map, you can encounter the TARDIS from Doctor Who. It's just genius. I love it. It's also brutally hard. Like if you thought you had to save scum through Baldur's Gate, which and that is admittedly a complaint that you can't have, but you need to save after every single encounter in Fallout because it will mess you up. But gratuitous gore, hilarious dialogue at times contrasted with the dark setting. It's also very, very, very compact. Like there's only like a dozen locations in the game, which does make it feel kind of small in scope, but what it does with those locations is incredible. This is probably, like objectively, it's probably one of the is probably the best game on this list. I do like Baldur's Gate 2 more, but Fallout 1 is still exceedingly good. This one took me again like 30 hours, and I'm gonna give this one a 10 out of 10. I haven't finished Fallout 2 yet, but I'm also gonna give Fallout 2 tentatively a 10 out of 10 because it's Fallout 1, all of its strengths where as like wacky scenarios contrasted with dark writing and setting and events, contrasted with a bunch of like comical elements with the difficult combat, but also in-depth customer characterization and stuff. And it also has all the problems of Fallout 1, which is the brutal combat and the tone can sometimes not be great. And yeah, I'm gonna just shut up. Fallout 3. Fallout 3 is really good. It's really good. It doesn't play like a Fallout game though. It kind of plays like I don't know what it plays like. I like it though. I don't love it. Well, I do love it, but not nearly as much as any of the other games in the series that I've played so far. It's really good. It doesn't have decisions don't mean as much. You're railroaded into the story as too much. Oh, I gotta go back. Fallout. The worst part about Fallout 1 is you have to get the water chip. If you don't get the water chip, you instantly fail. That's really bad. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. That's the biggest problem with Fallout. Consider it a 9.5 out of 10 just because of that. That's stupid. If I want to mess around pretending to be the Messiah, I shouldn't have to worry about that stupid water chip. Okay, rant over. You're railroaded into story a lot more than any of the previous games in the series, which I hate. But there also is a bunch of optional content. You can do a bunch of stupid stuff, like get the experimental MIRV, which launches 8 mini nukes at a time. And with the exception of Megaton, there isn't that many drastic choices that will do things that are irreversible. Yeah, it's just a really plus the shooting is janky. I mean, it's Bethesda. The shooting in combat is going to be janky, but you can do a bunch of stupid stuff, and it's pretty good. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I want to give it a 9 again, but 8 is probably fair. New Vegas, best in the series. It takes the writing and stuff of 1 and 2, but takes it into a much more conventional first-person shooter setting. I do wish that there was an option to play in an isometric mode, because that would just be great. I'm a sucker for isometric. I'm a sucker for isometric, but it's really good. I love it. It is everything that I loved about Fallout 1 and 2, plus like a better, not a better, but like a less frustrating combat system. And plus, since it's like 3D, there's tons of mods that make it, if you ask the right people, more playable. It's just really good. I love it. Everything about it. Plus, choice matters a lot more than in 3. Like, you can do things that will mess up things for the rest of the game and stuff. 10 out of 10 as well. Oh, Fallout 1, Fallout 2, no, Fallout 3 took me like 30 hours, 35, 34, 40 hours roughly. This one took me around 25 to 30 for my first playthrough. Darklands. This is... I really like what he was going for. The thing is I just couldn't stick with it very long because there was no explicitly defined end goal. It's a 1992 German CRPG, which has really interesting turn-based real-time with pause. Yes, all the way back in 92 they had real-time with pause combat. But the thing is that I can't read like half of the text because it's in this weird like, it's medieval font. And then there's no defined end goal. The mechanics that are there and like the combat are really fun to use. And like when you go into random small towns, like one of the first dialogue options you're given is to accuse the town of being a satanic cult, which will get you thrown out a lot. But there's no defined end state, which is a really unfortunate thing for me. Also, that's the thing in Fallout 3. Yes, there is an ending, but you just keep playing, which is kind of annoying. But yeah, Darklands pains me because a lot of people really, really, really love this game. I gotta give it like a 6 or 5 out of 10. I just can't recommend it right now. If somebody made like a remake with like better, with like a cleaned up UI, I would probably dig this game a ton. Geneforge, okay, gotta ignore that one. Geneforge 1 is a great game, but it's super unpolished. Like, that's why they're doing the Redux Kickstarter. It is a really compelling setting with really compelling philosophical values behind each one of the factions in it. But the combat is so unbalanced. Like, I was getting destroyed and save scumming every single fight in the early game, but then by late game, I just rolled over everything. I mean, yeah, that is kind of expected because of how the story progresses, but the balancing was just really off. Luckily, this was fixed in later entries. I still recommend Geneforge 1, especially if you're looking to get into CRPGs. It plays kind of like Fallout, except with indie budget and indie loose grasp on sound design because it was made by like one guy. I'm gonna give this one like a low 8 out of 10. Geneforge 2, it's like 1, but there's bigger. There's more locations. There's more factions. It's also a lot more unbalanced. Like, the writing is like twice as good, but it's even more unbalanced. It's really easy to get yourself trapped in the wrong place on the world map, and then you're basically just stuck and you have to reload a really old save, which sucks because the writing is so much more compelling, and to the grand overarching story of Geneforge, it's significantly more, well, not significantly more, it's very pivotal to the events of Geneforge 1 and 3. I haven't gotten further than 3, but it's just so unbalanced and kind of finicky. I gotta give it a 7 out of 10. It's still a good game, though. Still, don't get me wrong. It's just a lot more rough around the edges than I'd prefer. Oops. Geneforge 3. I love Geneforge 3. If when he finally gets around to updating it, it might eclipse up to the 25 hours, 25 hours, to like 22 hours for Geneforge 3. It breaks it down. There's no longer only one world map. It's a bunch of islands that are connected in a way that makes it tedious to backtrack between them. But luckily, you don't have to do that very often. But the writing is much better. There's less reasons to be like, oh, I'm gonna just be a person with ethics, so I join this faction, or I'm gonna be an immoral person, I'll join this faction. It's a lot more gray. You have to do a lot worse things for each side to, and it isn't just like you pick, I'm gonna be with these guys or these guys. You can pick on each island, or you can do both of their objectives on each island too, and just be this in chaos incarnate. It's really satisfying, and the difficulty is also much more balanced out. I only had to save scum in a couple areas, which is really impressive for Jeff Vogel games. But the combat's really fun. There's more creatures. The updated UI is fantastic. You can have actual companions who react to things. I know this sounds like basic stuff, but this is revolutionary for Geneforge. Geneforge 3 gets a 9 out of 10. Great game. I adore it. Dark Souls. I can't say anything new about Dark Souls. I love Dark Souls. It took me around 45 hours. Fun fact, on the night I beat Dark Souls, I had to stop marathoning the final boss because I had to turn in my college, my college college application. I really love Dark Souls, except for the second half. It gets kind of weak, but take the Flame Lurker from Demon Souls, put it into Dark Souls, and instead of the Bed of Chaos, boom. Dark Souls is great. I love Bed of Chaos. No, I don't love Bed of Chaos. I love Dark Souls, especially the bosses. The bosses are my favorite part of the Souls series, by far. Took me around 45 hours. Let's just say 9.5 out of 10. Demon Souls. Demon Souls is really good. It's not as good as Dark Souls because it has some annoying mechanics, like you can't level up at any bonfire. Or you lose health if you die once, then you get your health cut in half unless you wear a ring. But there's like no useful rings, so it doesn't really matter that you waste a ring slot for something that gives you a reasonable amount of health. And there's some really frustrating levels, like 4-2. I really don't like the fact that the world is broken up through a bunch of hubs. I prefer the continuous world of Dark Souls 1, where you didn't have, if you knew what you were doing, you could get from one end of the world to the other really fast. You can sequence break. You can't really do that in Demon Souls, but it has some great bosses, especially for this early in the series. It is the final boss, well, the real final boss, not the actual final boss, like the actual challenging boss, is one of the best in the series. He's great. Plus, it's kind of nice to have regeneration as like an item on items that you can get. Also, don't like that you you don't get your like Estus back at. You have to farm moss, which is annoying, but still a great game. Great bosses for the most part, except for Dragon God. Dragon God is worse than Bed of Chaos. At me all you want. Demon Souls 8.5 out of 10. It's a great game. It took me around 25 hours to beat. Dark Souls 2. I wanted to like Dark Souls 2, but it decided that the worst part of Dark Souls 1 should be its core mechanic of fighting multiple enemies at once, including in boss fights. the world design is... I don't like the teleporting at bonfires. Call me a Dumbo, because it's probably true, let's be real. But it just is not as compelling as walking around in the first half of Dark Souls 1. Plus, I don't like having only a couple Estus. I like to have, you start with 5, and then you can upgrade it to 10. I don't like starting with 1, and then you can upgrade it to 2, to 3, to 4, to 5. Give me 5, and then let me upgrade it to 10. Simpler that way. And plus, I don't like losing health when you die, because it's dumb. But then they have the anti-frustration feature of, oh, if you kill an enemy too many times, it'll just stop spawning, which makes it harder to grind in case you're stuck at a place. Which I wasn't, by the way. Shut up. I know I'm bad, but I'm not that bad. But it does kind of alleviate some of the worst parts of the game. There is some good bosses, and I've heard the DLC is really good, but I have not played those yet. So I give this one a 7.5 out of 10. So, like, it regresses from Dark Souls 1, like, a lot. It stumbles into problems that Dark Souls 1 didn't have. Diablo 2. Okay, I'm gonna get a lot of heat for this one. I didn't love Diablo 2. I really like the aesthetic. I really like the gore. It was fun for the most part, but I died 0 times up to the first boss, and then I died 5 times to the boss in a row. The bosses are an absurd difficulty spike. Like, it's not even funny how much the bosses are. Like, I couldn't even actually beat the game. Oh, oops. Dark Souls 2 took me around 25 hours. And like 2 hours of that was the final boss rush. Wait, what did I just do? Okay, here. Diablo 2. I played as a necromancer, so I couldn't actually beat Diablo because he would just one-shot all my minions, and because I only spec'd into minions, I kind of couldn't do anything. But the world is great, and I can understand that people really liked the competitive mode, like the multiplayer, but grabbing loot just is not that compelling to me. It doesn't work for me. The atmosphere was pretty good, though. 7.5 out of 10. These aren't really RPGs, but they're close enough. They're kind of action RPGs. Transistor and Bastion, both really good. Beautiful, stunning visually. I prefer Bastion because... I don't know why I prefer Bastion. They're both great games. They're short, which is nice. They don't stay longer than... Oh, Diablo 2 took me around 15 hours to get to Diablo and then die multiple times and then get annoyed and not come back. These both took me around 5 hours. I think I like Bastions because it resonated with me more for whatever reason. Even though I love the aesthetic and Transistor better. Transistor is also more inventive. But, yeah, they're both really good. Check them out. 8.5 out of 10 for both of them. Dex. It's the fine... Like, imagine if you took kind of a Deus Ex game and flattened it into 2D and then made it not nearly as good, but, like, not bad either. It's just a pretty good game. Took me around 10 hours to beat with almost 100% completion. It's pretty fun. Weapons are kind of janky, but it was pretty satisfying. And the endings wasn't big on much of the story and stuff, but the raw gameplay was pretty good. 7 out of 10. Okay, so... Oh, Torchlight as well. Torchlight action RPG. It's like Diablo 2, but everything is done to a worse standard. I don't really like the art style that much. The enemies were pretty boring, and it just kind of dragged on and on and on and on. I think I got around 20 hours in before I got tired and my eyes stopped working properly. Let's give it a 6.5 out of 10. Okay, so that's my last slide. Okay, I hope you guys hated every single... Aw, crap, I grabbed the Torchlight 2 poster. Okay, I'm dumb. I hope you guys enjoyed my garbage opinions.